Okay, to disassemble the camera, you need a 5/64. Take off this front screw for the lens cover. Take this apart. Underneath is a brass shim that holds in a primary protective lens cover. And of course this plate. You'll find the screw that is pointing towards this silver cable. This is the actual camera cable. This is for the motor for the shutter. It looks like it is that one right there. It will be either a 50 thousandths or a 35 thousandths screw to loosen up that set screw. This is what my 35 thousandths Allen wrench looks like. After you loosen up this set screw, and you see there's multiples, there's set screws pointing towards the motor and a couple other different things, but you need the one that angles towards that silver cable. Loosen it up a little bit. Take your 5/64 Allen wrench, and then here next to the silver cable is a focus adjustment screw. We'll back that out all the way, and you need to have a tray under it when you pull this out, but once it's all the way loose, you can pull the camera assembly loose, and there's this assembly that locks into this ring of the camera for focus, and it is basically screw, spacer, this engaging nut, and another spacer. There's actually a spring in there also. The spring didn't come out. That spring. So that's what the assembly looks like together. Set that to the side. There will be another either 35 thousandths or 50 thousandths screw that points at the front lens. So right now the shutter is open, and if I hit the close button, you can see it open and close. So with it open, there's another lens down in there, and you look for the set screw that's pointing at that lens. And on this camera, Zane has adjusted it, or retapped it for a 440 screw. So this one takes a 50 thousandths Allen wrench. Back it out a couple turns, and over a tray, and with a Q-tip, you have to push this lens out the same way that the camera came out. So it comes out through the bottom, slides out. Once you have all that done, I like to use clean Q-tips and sometimes alcohol, but normally to clean them out it's because there's water in it, and I clean the tube out with Q-tips. You also will have to dry off the back side of the shutter, so then I close the shutter, Q-tip, dry it off, make sure there's no fingerprints or little fibers from the Q-tips on there, because any little thing on that will cause the screen to get hazy and blurry. And then after that's clean, everything's dry, I next dry primary lens. Pretty gentle, because these cotton Q-tips can actually scratch the coatings on the lenses, so just barely cleaning it and drying it. Then this goes back in first, and right now I have the shutter is shut, and then it slides all the way forward. I'm gonna just lightly clamp this down. I mean, it's just the lightest of pressure to clamp it into place. And then before you do anything else, check to make sure that the shutter will open and close. If you have the shutter open when you install it, it can slide a little too far forward, and if you clamp it down there, the shutter will not always close very well. So it's best to have the shutter closed when you're tightening that into place. See if I can get it to do it. So right now it won't close. If you have problems with the shutter, it's probably why, or it has slid down. So I'll loosen it back up, close the shutter, make sure it's slid all the way in, and lightly tighten it back up. The lenses on these will crack really easy, or if you put burrs on those lenses, it'll make them really hard to disassemble. So now that that is clamped back down, I usually spend a little time drying off the camera body on the outside, and with a fresh Q-tip I just very lightly clean off the front of it. And then to reassemble, I get the camera started. About halfway in, I line up the black piece on this screw into that notch, and then send it home. And then it is the 5/64 again to yeah, 5/64 to adjust the focusing screw. And at the moment I'll leave that loose, but once it's started in there, the camera can't back out and that stuff won't fall out and you won't lose the parts. So I go back up to this part, make sure that the shutter is good and clean. I'm going to clean the primary protector glass. The more oils and crud you get on it, the worse your picture will be. If you can work on the thing with just using tweezers, that would be ideal. Get it cleaned up, dried off, and there is a little recess in this that it sets in. Again, we'll make sure we have no fingerprints. Brass protector, got it upside down, holes should line up. And it's the 5/64 again. Tighten that one up. And make sure that the shutter still opens and closes. At this point you can set it up on the welder and adjust your focus with this back here. This screw back here, and get it focused. If the picture is too far zoomed in, you need to move the camera out and then refocus. And then after you get pretty close to where you want, you can rotate this cable to change the orientation of the camera. And then the last thing to do will be to set the set screw that is pointing at the silver cable. Just lightly tighten it up. Just very, very light finger tight, just so that it stops moving. These screws require very, very little torque to strip them out. And then the last point, this piece of wire is to hold a secondary protective piece of glass on that, and normally I just take a grinder and make little squares out of these larger quartz slip sheets, and that'll help keep the splatter off of the expensive little lens in there.